So before I came to understand the deeper meaning of today's gospel, I used to always think of this one as the parable of unfairness. Because one person gets 5 talents, another gets 2 talents, and then the last person receives only 1 talent. And to an English-speaking ear, this does seem to be an unfair parable, doesn't it? Because when we hear the word talent, we automatically think of somebody's gifts, whether it be intelligence, athleticism, or many of the other gifts that we have been given by God. And if we see today's gospel in that context, it definitely seems like this is an unfair parable. Because the first man would have received 5 gifts, and so be a very balanced and gifted individual, whereas the last one would only receive a single gift and would naturally feel slighted. However, the term back in the first century would mean something completely different. It would not stand for one's natural gifts, but was a method for counting a large amount of money. A talent would describe a large amount of silver or gold. And just to give you an idea of how large, a single talent of silver would equal about 20 years' worth of wages. And if it was a gold talent, it would be even more than that. So imagine a man who made an average salary of about $50,000 a year. He would have just received $1 million from his master. Meaning that the man who received even a single talent would still have been given an exorbitant amount of money by the master. So when seen in that context, no one really gets slighted. Which is why the action and response of the man who received the single talent stands out so starkly. For in the parable, the first 2 men who received 5 talents and 2 talents respectively, each doubled their talents. Not an easy thing to do when you consider the amount of money that is. Whereas the man given the single talent goes and hides it. And I think an important question to examine is why? Why would he do that? And we can get insight into this by his response to the master, in which he says, "I knew you were a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you did not winnow." Let's pause right there. He has just insulted the master. Because by calling him a hard man, he sees him as unforgiving and selfish. And by referring to him as reaping where he did not sow, he is calling him a thief. Definitely not the most endearing words. And it ultimately shows us that the response of this servant to the master is one of fear. The sad reality is that the last man has a truly skewed view of the master. He doesn't understand him. Not only is he unable to recognize his generosity, the man just gave him the equivalent of like $1 million, but he's afraid of him and calls him a thief. And this response helps us to understand what is really going on with the third man. Because one of the realities of sin is that it distorts our view of God. Go back to Genesis chapter 2 with the fall of Adam and Eve. Whereas before, they see God as this wonderful being who loves them so profoundly. And they realize that everything that they have has been given to them from Him. Yet once they choose to eat of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, what do? They go and hide themselves from our Lord in fear. The sin literally changed their perspective of our Lord. And the same thing is going on in today's gospel. Think about it. It is impossible for God to be a thief. Everything that has been created belongs to Him. And if we pay attention to the master's response, we get another insight into what the man's sin was. Because the master calls him a wicked and slothful servant. Notice the master doesn't call him a murderer or a thief or an adulterer. He calls him slothful. Meaning the third man's sin was being slothful, which means he was lazy. And therefore mean that more than anything, he struggled with sins of omission. My brothers and sisters, that should be a wake-up call for you and I. Because it's very easy to fall in the litany of the I have nots. Meaning as long as I haven't stolen, or I haven't lied, or I haven't murdered, then I'm good enough, right? I'm a good person. That's actually not the case. While it is good that we don't commit those sins, simply not committing them is not enough, is not sufficient. If we truly want to share in the Master's joy as was offered to the first two servants, we must also include the litany of the I haves. Today I have prayed. Today I have cared for those in need. Today I have forgiven those who wronged me. Because both are necessary if we desire to multiply the many generous talents that you and I have been given. And that beautiful responsorial psalm that we sung today really echoes what that will look like. The Lord bless you from Zion. May you see the prosperity of Jerusalem all the days of your life. Especially if we see Jerusalem as the anticipation of the new Jerusalem, the new creation, the kingdom of heaven. My brothers and sisters, you and I are called to embrace this teaching of our Lord, so that we can glory in the numerous talents and graces that our Lord wishes to shower upon us, the greatest of which is the kingdom of heaven.